Day. I'm Dr. Laura Hanson, and this is Donna Anello. We're so glad that you're joining us again. We are Be the First Step because children really can't wait.
So our topic for this webinar is seeking successful outcomes. What does that mean? It means that when the new school year starts, like it's about to, different counties start different times. It's rolling out in the month of August. Preschool will start toward the latter part of August. By the end of August, all kids, including college kids, will be back at school. And what happens is the excitement and the anticipation of starting the new school year is upon us. And we're optimistic as teachers, as parents, as children. We're optimistic to have a new beginning, a new start, new teachers, new school for some children, returning school, reconnecting with friends, making new friendships, new curriculum. Children are excited to tell the teacher what it is that they've learned, their competencies, all these things. So that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. However, sometimes we don't know exactly what success looks like.
Right.
Sometimes it's not exactly as we envisioned. Exactly. So first, let's talk about what does a successful adjustment to school as a young child look like.
Good topic.
So I just made myself a few notes to make sure I don't forget any of the important details. So in education, we typically look in 4 domains. The first one is social. We look at how the child is interacting. How do they interact with each other, the new classmates, the returning classmates? How do they interact with the teacher? Are they expressive regarding their needs and their feelings, their thoughts on different things? Are they able to socialize in a way that's appropriate and well received by the others, where they receive positive feedback? These are some of the things we look at. And it should be mutually fulfilling. Their interactions and engagements with the other children and the teacher should be mutually fulfilling. And that should encourage them then to take the next step as they learn the life's lessons about being socially appropriate in all their interactions. They should be happy in their classroom, and they should come home happy, and they should have a lot of positive energy to convey to their parents when they get home.
Yes, yes, yes.
Academically, we look at that also. And academically is their ability to learn new things from the cognitive perspective, where they may go into school and they may know the first letter of their name, but as time goes by, they learn not only their name, what it looks like, but they learn the names of their classmates. They learn things that are age appropriate for them. Numbers, letters, alphabet, uppercase, lowercase, all the different aspects of what we look at cognitively. Then we look at them physically. Are they able to do things like hold a pen or a pencil or a marker or a crayon or a paintbrush correctly? Or do they hold it incorrectly? Or do they do this? Or do they do this? These are the things we look at as well as cutting with scissors, opening their food containers, manipulating small pieces, puzzles, blocks, that grip. We look at all those things. And then we look at their big body movement when they go out on the playground. How do they interact with the other children in big body play? Are they too rough? Can they exercise restraint? Are they able to climb? Are they able to swing? Can they pump on a swing? We look at balance, right? Do they have the core strength to balance? Can they hang and then drop down from monkey bars? Are they equally balanced on both sides of their bodies? We look at those areas, and then we also look at language and communication. It's so telling, right? What happens in the development of language. And we look at things including nonverbal body language and facial expressions, but we also look at their articulation, their pronunciation. We look at all the different types of language, like receptive language, expressive language, and seeing how they're meeting their milestones in that area. And then kind of overarching, we look at their adaptive behavior, which is, in essence, just how are they functioning in general within their environment and in their life, which is at school most of the time.
I think that adaptive quality is a really interesting one. When I do the stress response test, that is one of the first components that you're actually measuring. How is this person adapting to this new test inside of a new environment. So adaptation is very important, especially for children, because they're doing all these things for the first time. They're going into pre-K for the first time. They're going into first grade for the first time. So all of these new experiences is a wonderful opportunity to actually see, am I adapting to that right, in the right way?
That's right. And it really encompasses all of the components working together correctly.
Oh, beautiful.
So it really is the integration of all those things. So that's an important thing that we look at as well. So what do we look at when we're looking to meet milestones? Now we're drilling down a little bit deeper, becoming a little more specific. One of the roles of a teacher in preschool is to observe the child every day, even as they enter the classroom. How do they look? What is their demeanor? What is their attitude? Just, you get to know your children, and you look to see, is my child okay? Is this child okay when they're coming into the classroom?
Sure.
But now we drill down a little deeper and we look at specific milestones. So let's take a look. We have to choose one age. Let's choose a 4-year-old.
Okay.
And let's just look at what would some of those developmental milestones for a 4-year-old child look at. So, of course, first thing, we're looking, are they meeting their milestones, or are they delayed or lagging behind? And which ones are they meeting? Which ones are they delayed in?
Sure.
We want to be very specific in this area, because that's going to target if the identification where intervention might be necessary. So let's talk, we'll kind of go in the same order that we went when we were talking about the different domains that we look at.
Okay.
So let's look, is this child making new friends? Meaning, are they talking? Are they joining in? Are they reconnecting with children that they know? What's their comfort level in being in proximity to the other children? The overall interactions of the child socially, that's what we're looking at. Is this child, little children hug each other and touch each other, and that's okay.
Right.
But is this child uncomfortable in that, or is this child hurtful when they do it unintentionally or intentionally? So we look at some of those things. We also look at the natural curiosity of a child. Is this child wandering around the classroom? Are they engaging in the different centers that the teacher has out? Now, if this is an accredited school, they'll have numerous centers that are specifically outfitted for things in that center, like science. It'll have a lot of natural objects, outdoor objects, magnifying glasses, measuring things, rulers, notepads, papers, maybe even a book about nature. So is the child engaging in the different centers?
That's a very important part. Yes.
And when they look at them and they manipulate them, are they doing it correctly, or do they not know how to use certain everyday things like little tweezers? Do they not know how to use those things, or take and pull them apart? Do they break them, because that's how they're manipulating them? Other things, is the child going to the easel and coloring? And if they're coloring, what are they coloring? Are they making grids? Are they making circles? Can they try to write their name on there? What's their grip on the easel? Is it even interesting to them? Or does this child just return over and over again to the same center and do the same thing, and perhaps even take the same manipulative and just work that over and over and over again? Some other areas is how does a child interact and engage in group activities?
Yes.
Does the child, can the teacher and their classmates draw them in to be a willing participant? Do they seem happy and comfortable? Do they participate, tell stories? Little children, they love to tell stories about something that happened at home, and they'll interject where they think it's appropriate. Can they follow instructions, multi-part instructions? Let's clean up the toys and then come sit down at circle time. Is a child able to, in their brain, think through what happens first, what happens next, and then what do I have to do? We also look at their name recognition, alphabet letter recognition of their peers. Sometimes children who have a learning delay will call another child in the classroom him or her, or that boy, or that girl. And sometimes the pronouns are even mixed. They'll call a him a her, or her him as well. Things like recognizing the alphabet. Most children by 4 years old should be able to sing the alphabet song.
Right.
If they're not, that would be a red flag.
Sure.
That would be something. And those are things that happen in these large groups. The teacher will have the children sing together. They'll go around and say everyone's name. So this is the repetitiveness of what happens in these group activities. The child should be learning and progressing from when they first entered the classroom in the first day to a week, 2 weeks, a month later down the road. Their language skills should include things like the correct pronunciation. As far as a child who's 4 years old, at least 75% of what the child says should be recognizable to a stranger.
Mm-hmm.
Mom shouldn't have to interpret what is being said.
I see a lot of that. I really do.
Yeah.
I see a lot of that.
Yeah, when someone else, maybe at the mall or Chick-fil-A, asks them a question, mom shouldn't have to
decipher it.
Decipher.
Well, this is what he's trying to say. No, at 4, you should be able to communicate.
Yeah. Should be able to. Articulation and clarity to express an idea. A child should be able to put together those 4, 6, 7, 8 words in a sentence and be able to express a clear thought at that age. Their receptive language, these are the words that when they're spoken to them, they have an understanding. Well, a child at this age, in the 3rd year, concluding with the 4th birthday, should have over 1,000 words.
Yes.
In their receptive language, and they should be learning 1,500 to 2,000 new words during that year. Language,
it's a lot, right?
It's a big.
You got to be ready to build.
Yeah,
gotta build.
A very big learning curve during that year. And things like the child's expressive language, how able are they to convey their thoughts and their feelings verbally versus the child who's not able to do that and will find some other way of communicating physically.
And usually it's going to be younger age or age driven.
Right.
So a 4-year-old might throw that temper tantrum, start screaming, something that we might expect around age 2. They're still holding on that for their way of trying to communicate.
Right, and that's why it's called a developmental delay.
That's right.
Because that aspect of their language development has not progressed past that point.
Sure.
And that's why sometimes it's an enigma, because a parent may see their child at having age appropriate behaviors in some area, but not in others. So it would seem that they are progressing, but then sometimes they're not. And so,
well, and I think a lot of times that people, I even know like how many times you'll get questions and, well, what do you do about this and what do you do about that? And there's no cookbook to this.
Yeah.
You have to be able to look at the individual. You have to be able to assess that individual, because this individual will probably be completely different than this other individual. And there might be some similarities, but they're different. So we have to know all the things that they can possibly be able to do, and then understand the areas that each child, where that individual child may have a deficit.
That's exactly right. And one of those areas that we see in 4-year-olds often is in that self-care type thing, which is washing hands, toileting, putting on jackets, tying shoes, all those type of things start to develop at that time. But certain children it will take them 12 months, 12 months of that 4th year to arrive at that place where other children will start the year and they'll be able to do it. So it is the determination whether this is delayed behavior or if this is just part of their own development, which is totally normal for them. That's why that training is required, so teachers and parents can identify what might be happening at that time.
Sure. Okay.
So we should talk about, what does a developmental delay look like in a child of this age? We told you now what it should look like, some of the skills, and there are so many more. We've just highlighted a few that would be very easily relatable to you, but there are so many more things that medical professionals, educational consultants, Dr. Laura, pediatric chiropractic, focusing on neurology. There's so much more. We just gave you a few things
Sure.
that are important to know.
Sure.
But what does a child who is delayed in this area look like? And it might be surprising for some people to hear some of these things. So let's go ahead.
Okay.
So a child that avoids interactions. Avoidance. Now, I have in families that I've worked with, parents may tell me their child is very shy.
Right.
So sometimes
yes.
being avoidance is labeled as shy. It's called shy. When does shy become
an issue?
When does shy become an issue? So this is where a child is avoiding interaction with a teacher or a classmate, or it's just inappropriate and not regular development inappropriate. It's beyond that. This goes beyond that.
Well, I think that word avoidance is really key.
Yeah.
Because children are so sensory seeking.
Yes.
We should see them going towards everything.
Right.
But with appropriate boundaries too.
Right.
So we're not talking a bull in a china shop. We're talking that they should want to know. Like you were saying about going around and being engaged in classroom.
Yeah.
Okay, so the kid that is sitting over in the corner by themselves, that would be a very good example of avoiding.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And it can even go a step beyond. It can go where the teacher has called everyone maybe to a circle time or a large group or even a small group activity, and there's that one child who sits by himself, maybe covering his ears or maybe rocking or
even just turning his back to the rest of the crowd.
And it initially can look as though it's defiance, like a battle of the wills. But sometimes and often it's not.
Right.
Sometimes it's something's
going on in that environment.
Beyond that.
And they can't integrate it. They can't handle it right then and there.
And then you have children who have those sensory seeking behaviors. You're seeking input constantly. So those proprioceptive behaviors where they're falling down, they're crashing.
Oh, that's a big one.
They are banging into other children. They get a pen, a marker, and they write too hard on the paper. They break things in the classroom. That's all sensory seeking.
Absolutely.
They're seeking input. And that can be a tough one because other children can get hurt.
Yes.
And the teacher and the parents want all the children to be safe. But this child will get in trouble for that type of behavior because it's a safety issue, but really it's an expression of something else.
That's
and it needs to be addressed, not necessarily as a discipline problem. Right,
but more like a neurological issue.
Right.
Not, when we're talking about the word neurological, we're relating it back to development. If something goes wrong in development, it just happens to be part of the neurology. So that avoidance is really key to pay attention to. But then, just like what you're saying, this is where I think some of these kids start getting labeled as being the bad kid in the class. And they're not. They just don't know how to verbalize to you what they're going through.
And if you think about it, if a child is inappropriately rough with other children, or banging, or falling down, or breaking any of these behaviors, often that child is put in timeout, or sits aside, or misses some playground time, which is the exact opposite thing of what the child is looking for. They are behaving this way because they're seeking input. So now they're in a situation where they're receiving no input at all.
The frustration,
so you can
right?
Imagine, you can imagine the frustration, and that will not resolve the issue, because even if you try to talk to the child, they're in such a frustrated state. That's the key thing. You can't talk through it with them.
That's stress. And when a person's in stress, it is pretty easy. There's two messages going on: fight or run. You try to have a conversation with somebody. I don't care if we're talking about a child or an adult. When a person is in a stress response, they hear those two messages, and you will sound like Charlie Brown's teacher. So that little kid that's been kind of pushed off to the side, his whole physiology is changing right in that moment. And if that becomes the chronic environment for him, his outcome isn't good, is it?
It's not good. And what happens, because in that sit on the bench for 5 minutes in that place, he's not getting any input. So what happens is he seeks input other ways, and then just that being being isolated to sit there, that becomes the input instead, because that's negative attention, which is still input. So
it's still attention. That's right.
So and then you have children. You have the children who are unnecessarily clumsy or uncoordinated. That often is tied in with fear of loud noises and other input like that. Those are other things that is something worth noting and looking into, trying to find an origin why that is. If that's a repetitive
the origin, that's the key.
If that's a repetitive behavior. Children with executive functioning issues have things like distractions for them. They're easily distracted. You may have a child who may be trying to write their name, and outside the window they hear a sound, and so immediately they're drawn to that sound because that takes precedent in their brain.
That's right.
Because of
it's reflexive control.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And so they can't learn when they're constantly overstimulated by every little thing in the room.
And that same child is a child who will have impulsive behavior and can't really control their impulsivity. You know, the thought is in their head and then it's out of their hands, out of their legs, it's out of their body. And this is a child who really doesn't know, can't order in their heads what to do first and then next and then last. So you can see how a young child, this is really frustrating for, but you can see how if this is not addressed, when a child has to start taking tests or prioritize their schoolwork or write different things, write papers and things, take an SAT, take an ACT, take a driving test. This will play out long term. The gap will just continue to widen and widen and widen as the demands for them to be good at executive functioning skills becomes more and more
in control.
Yeah.
The higher part of the brain function.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So
and this is what's creating that role model of what is going to cause that executive function to work the way that it's going to work. So if you aren't going through this progression and integrating things like you're supposed to, as that frontal lobe is supposed to take charge, it's taking charge based on what was there before it to turn it on and release control to it.
Right. And it's, and children, my observation, children learn in that scaffolding model where they have the base and then they build on it. They recall experiences, they pull those experiences forward to help them understand the new experience and have a greater understanding, and it just continues to build and build and build on itself until they have just a good understanding.
And so if you
instead of
have your scaffold taken out, you've missed a leap, a step.
And it's like learning that skill for the first time every single time.
And
then maybe you can address this from your clinical perspective. Children can also lose skills that they once had.
Absolutely.
Because that's something that's concerning as well. A child who could read, could write, can do certain things, can speak, and starts to regress and then maybe loses those skills.
I've seen that many times where parents will come in and they'll bring the child in and they'll say, my child was really developing as expected. And then there's an event. And usually we're finding that there's an event around 18 months of life. It also happens to coincide when there is the MMR vaccine. And we're not trying to turn this into a vaccine webinar, but it is something I have noticed clinically over and over and over again. So one aspect that could help explain that is that if that child's physiology is not working at 100%, that immune system can only take so much. And if the body's burden exceeds what it can handle, there'll become a tipping point. And then there'll be one more thing like a vaccine or even a trauma or even just inflammation accumulating from food sensitivities or deficiencies or an imbalance in bacteria. One of those become a tipping point. And when that bucket falls over, There is a cascade. And if people do not jump in and able to stop it, then it begins to be the role model for that child. And oftentimes those children regress right on the spot. They lose their communication skills. They lose their ability to pay attention, to focus, fixate their gaze, and then their health. Their health is typically lots of allergies, asthma, ear infections, bloated bellies, always, just kind of moody. I've seen it over and over again.
And this, we can also talk about picky eaters or resistant
exactly.
eaters. And, not suggesting that a child would starve themselves to death, but they become so selective that if that food is not presented to them, that texture of food, even that color of food is not presented to them, they resist eating it.
Exactly. And this is what happens when a child's world is so out of control. They have to find the way to control it. And oftentimes it becomes that child who is so rigid that there's no way this little being is actually enjoying life. So that's a very important aspect. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah, because I've worked with children who are such picky eaters that if they are participating in packing their own lunch, they will have applesauce, pudding, and yogurt.
All those three consistencies.
Yeah,
right.
And that's their happy place, their happy meal. That's what they want to eat. Obviously, nutritionally, texturally, interest-wise, there's nothing really good about that.
And then oftentimes it's complex carbs and very sugared foods, because they're actually feeding an environment in their gut. And when we get into physiology in later webinars, we'll highlight those, and then we'll really dive into it when we do our summit.
So early identification and early intervention services can help these children.
Absolutely.
It's been proven time and time again. They need to be able to function successfully in school and in their family home lives. Their families need to be able to function.
Family life.
I know.
We'll get into that one another time too.
So the goal is that they achieve some high level of academic success, greater than what they would have had, and that they meet their milestones, that they make healthy, successful social interactions, and that their bodies, just the functioning of their body, is just in a healthy place.
Absolutely. And we're doing these webinars every Wednesday because Donna and I are very, very passionate about this topic. And if you're listening or you pass this to someone and you are really have in the back of your mind, something may not be right with your child and they're getting ready to start school, we really hope that you'll reach out, because this is a new school year. That's the excitement. We want everyone to do well. But if you already feel it, we're going to encourage you to reach out and make that call so that we can help you out.
And there are so many solutions that we can offer to help a family and a child with the planning and the organizing, so that it can address these issues, so this child can feel that sense of achievement and get positive feedback. They're still being who they are. It's not changing who the child is.
Oh, no.
It's working with those things
so they can be optimal.
That's right. It's just strengthening those outcomes.
Absolutely.
So what are your next steps? What can we help you do? How can we help you accomplish the goals? Would you like to talk?
Sure. So what we would like to offer, if you're watching or you pass this video off or webinar off to a friend, they'll get to see this last slide for sure as well. But if you reach out to us, we would like to extend a 30-minute phone consultation at absolutely no charge. Sometimes you just have questions. And if we can help out and give you some direction, or also tell you about how we will be able to help, we would like to have that opportunity as well. What about for the teachers?
Well, what if you're a teacher and you recognize some of the children that you've had in the past, and you're anticipating having some children like this? It is your heart, right? It's a teacher's heart to help these children. How can we help you? And we want to help. We want to help you manage the dynamic that you have in the classroom. with children who may be considered inclusion children in your classroom. We want to give strategies so that you can identify what's happening and you can address it immediately and start seeing those successful outcomes much sooner. And we have so many solutions.
Oh, yes.
Is it a behavior problem or is it a developmental delay? It can be confusing. They can look similar, but they need to be handled differently.
Yes.
And we have those solutions. So what we would like to offer is the first 3 teachers who contact us equals free teacher training session at your school. We will come to your school,
yes.
both of us, and we will discuss the topic that is
most pertinent, to
yeah.
either your school. You may have a particular area that you'd like us to focus on, or you may give us free harness and we say, okay, let us give you some global ideas of what this looks like and how you can really manage a classroom, especially when you have a handful of children that may have some kind of developmental issue.
That's right, because the children with a developmental issue, they require more time.
Yes.
But there's maybe 1 or 2 of them. What about the other children?
That's
You're
right.
trying to meet
That's
the
right.
needs of the other children who are typically developing at the same time. How do you satisfy everyone?
That's perfect.
And get through your lesson plan?
Well, and that's a big deal because I really have a lot of love and compassion for No Child Left Behind, but you're absolutely right, Donna. What about the other children? So it needs to be an approach that's really for bringing balance to the classroom. And then our last area, which I've got to tell you is my most, really it's my favorite, is we would like to meet with the school directors and have a consultation. I'm definitely going to let Donna talk on this area, but I would love to share that a colleague of mine, one of the hats that I wear is a neurodevelopmental therapist, and one of my colleagues in that particular arena is up in Pennsylvania and is in a private school, and literally it is part of the curriculum of the school that every child will receive a developmental screening. So if we were doing this when kids were coming in, we would begin to change the trajectory of their outcome.
That's absolutely true. And because we offer a third-party, unbiased assessment that is both clinical and educational in content, we can offer programs to you school directors that we can either implement for you, or we can train your staff to help you implement them within your school itself. We can teach you and train you and be available for over the course of the year if any questions or concerns should arise.
Well, that's really what we are about. We want to help the individual parents. We want to help with their children. We want to help the teachers. And I would also put /doctors there as well. Sometimes we address other doctors in our presentations, and just by chance, if this is being heard by my colleagues in the chiropractic world, the same thing is true for you all. You are a beginning signpost for these families. We are looking for doctors of chiropractic that are willing to go through training in order to do developmental assessments around the globe, because Donna and I are only 2 people, and there are not a lot of people that do what we do. So we are interested in building a team. The teachers, you are a huge part of this whole dynamic, and you've been given so many things that you weren't necessarily trained to do, and so we want to reach out and help. And then again, the school directors, you could be the champions in your community by stepping out and doing something so different. So here's our contact information. Please feel free to reach us. There is our website, BeTheFirstStep.com, my phone number, Donna's phone number, and our email. And be sure and like us on Facebook.
That's right. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to speaking with you soon.
Good night, everyone.